A is formed in 1950,
That's
and
right.
you're a founding member,
Yeah.
and then you're the president from 1953 to 1954.
Well, I was the fourth president. I guess that's about right.
About right. What were the instigating circumstances that caused the group to get together and form this group? Was it wasn't necessarily, was it dissatisfaction or just a need that needed to be served? Obviously in Washington you've got a ready market of people in government agencies that might be close to each other, so you've got a specialized group. Do you remember some things about why the group chose to get formed at that point in time?
Did you ever hear the name of Robert Stromberg?
Stromberg.
Federal Communications Commission.
Oh, sure. Stromberg Carlson, the former, there was a Stromberg Carlson Corporation.
I don't know where he is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, he invited his opposite files all around Washington to come in and have lunch in the cafeteria in the Commerce Building. And that built up to regular meetings. One of the members of that group was Bob King. He had taught at Yale. He came to Yale about the time I did, a little after. And he was with, what was the outfit that dealt with, I don't think it's rural electrification, it's some other agency. They had offices down there.
Okay.
Opposite the...
So he's with a government agency.
Well, he was with a government agency at the time, and he invited a group of people to come out to his house one evening. And we kicked this thing around, and the conclusion of that group was, well, why don't we organize a group here that will attempt to reconcile the different approaches to economic problems. There were differences among the agencies.
Just at the
for example, we wouldn't accept the railroad account.
Mm-hmm.
So the railroads, if they got involved in the registration with us, had to reconcile their counting with what we thought it ought to be.
Kind of the precursor of the New York Penn Central problem.
Yes, exactly.
In many ways.
So that grew, and there some pretty good people involved. GAO
sure.
Produced a lot of them. Who else is I'm over? Well, almost any independent agency had one or more represented. In the early days, when the numbers were as great as they are now.
And they're even more so now with the IG Act and the Chief Financial Officers Act and all the legislation in the last 10 years.
That's right.
But so you, in the 1950s, it really was instigated by trying to resolve some interagency differences.
That's right.
And then I guess one of the issues that came up, as I remember reading materials on this, was the use of government accounting experience as qualifying experience to obtain a CPA certificate.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a precipitating issue, but it became an important issue, and ultimately you and the AGA assisted in negotiating the...
Well, I carried the burden on that one.
Mm-hmm. I kind of gathered that.
Yeah, I did.
And
I was invited to write a paper for a meeting of, what's the name of the outfit that has the CPA?
NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy?
That's one I'm trying to check out. I think it was John Cooley who got me invited to do that, go down and speak to him on this subject. It may have been somebody else. Anyway, someone I knew said, couldn't you come to this meeting and explain to these state people what we're trying to do? I think I put it in the paper. I'd have to look again.
The so you were kind of elected to be the spokesperson on that issue.
Yeah, that's right.
That and the
On the theory that I had more exposure to the problems. The specialists only had no one thing.
well, plus you had been an academic, and so you had some credentials from the teaching side as well.
Yeah.
And ultimately, of course, an equation or an equivalency is worked out, and government kind of experience is formally recognized. I think as a matter of the model bill now, it's just something that's assumed. Many years later, it's not even, most people just don't even understand why it was a controversy. But I can see where in earlier times something would have had to been proposed. About this time also, you become an officer of the American Accounting Association. You get
Well, they always had somebody, a non-teacher, as vice president.
Yeah, let me just kind of check my cards and see if I can remember when that was.
1956.
56, the vice president, 1956.
Well, that's when I became chief accountant.
Just prior to becoming, as you became chief accountant, you also became active in what we call today the Institute of Management Accountants, then the NAA. You were the chapter president in D.C. in 1961 and 62.
I did that, when I joined them. There was no provision in their rules to sell subscriptions without joining the organization. So Earl King and I talked it over, and you're a bachelor, you don't have any family problems, you can go to the meetings. That's the way it worked out.
This kind of explains why you were in the AGA now, I guess, the person to write up the history of the relationships with other professional societies, because
yes, that's
you had
right.
been the NAA president, you've been active on the special committee to form the APB, so you were active with professionals.
That's right.
Vice president of the AAA, you, of course, as we mentioned at the top of the tape, all the AICPA Gold Medal Awards. So I guess when someone says, what role did you play in the AGA, I guess it was bridge building. You did a lot of bridge building to other organizations in behalf of the AGA.
I think so.
There was a comment that was made in something that Dale and I read about the AGA having very stringent membership requirements. I'm puzzled by that. I'm not sure.
Who would ask that question?
Someone had made the statement that the AGA had very stringent membership requirements, or the FGAA had very stringent membership requirements. I was puzzled by that. I wondered if that meant that you had to be involved in a certain branch of government service, or if that was maybe just a little bit of an overstatement.
Well, I had a lot of trouble with other people in Washington on this question of what constitutes a government account.
Oh.
And the problem was that many of the people who wanted to join had to go through a gauntlet of resistance here and there, because they were management people and not professional accountants.
Now I understand.
And a lot of them got management jobs or even controllers' jobs.
But they weren't accountants.
But they were not accountants. So the term was changed to, what is it we call it now?
Association of Governmental Accountants. The federal government terminology was removed. Instead of saying Federal Government Accountants Association, it's now the Association of Governmental Accountants.
In fact, there are very many municipal accountants in it today.
Well, they changed the bylaws. It started out as just federal accountants. And I insisted that didn't mean the management people who use the product of the accountants, although they ought to know some accounting. But they weren't actively doing it. So
that kind of,
There was,
yeah.
we were criticized at one time about this for spreading of the benefits of an association beyond the federal level. They said, well, you're just asking a lot of other people to join so you have revenue to spend.
Yeah, but the argument
Sounds like the budget, doesn't it?